What? No, that's not right, man. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by, taking a look at my video. As always, you know, my broadcasts and everything are in English, but I gotta say what's up to my people in the Philippines. So magandang umaga, kamusta na? Masaya kong kitikang muli. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by, taking a look at my stuff. And I will have the rest of the languages at the end of the video. I want to make sure my intro is not too crazy long, so I don't want to be sitting here spitting out all the languages, because it shows 19 languages total. So I got you at the end, at the very end. Anybody who's coming from Russia or who does speak Russian, привет to you, spasibo for coming by and taking a look at my video. But we are still in the Crypto Cup. So I have the round 2, and it's crazy because we have another Russian versus American slash Filipino roundup because we had Grishchuk last time. So it's kind of crazy, you know, we just kind of switched. But anyway, appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. It is Daniil Dubov versus Wesley So. So if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we got for the game. All right, so we got D4, knight to F6. So we start off with the Indian. So you guys are always hearing me talk about all the different possibilities you can get into. And we've actually covered quite a few. So we get into a new one today. So we got C4, E6, knight comes to F3. We have D4 and we have G3. So we have the Catalan opening. And so this was always one of the ones that I was telling you guys I can get into, but I don't think we might have gotten into it at some point. But, you know, this is something I personally play myself. So it's kind of near and dear to my heart. But usually you see Wesley So playing it because this is one of his specialty openings. You don't usually see another person play it against him. But sometimes they do that. You know, they try to throw you off and say, hey, man, I can play your stuff just as good. So we'll see. We'll see what Daniil Dubov has. So we got bishop to E7. Bishop comes to G2. We see castles by black. We got queen to C2. I think either castles or queen to C2 is pretty much like the most popular moves in this position. And so we got C5. You know, anytime, white has or black has established a nice center, you know, the other opponent is always trying to meet that at least, you know. So you're trying to get just as much space as your opponent does. So we got pawn takes C5, D4, we got B4, and then we have A5. Like I said before, black is not wanting to let white get a good center going, get a good clump of pawns. Anytime you have any type of far advanced pawns, you know, the opponent is going to be working to try to break that down. So A5 is a perfect move to do that. Mostly because you're not able to play A3 here to take care of the pawn structure, because you're going to be taking here, and you can't take back, of course, because you have rook takes, and maybe bishop is a possibility, but you don't really want your bishop just kind of stuck right there, because you will push A5, and then what is your bishop doing? Your bishop is just like holding up these pawns. So we see B5 that gives away the C5 pawn. But we do see knight B to D2. Everything is equal. So, I mean, both sides are doing pretty well. So we got knight B to D7. And we have knight to B3. Usually you're probably going to see knight to B3 after you pushed A4. Just because after knight to B3 comes, you're going to be looking at, the pawn pushing the A4 and knocking that knight out of the way. But, the intention most likely is to take the bishop anyway. And then we do see E5 by Wesley So. And that is actually the novelty of the game. And upon further review, this actually can just give away a pawn just kind of for free. It might, some of you guys probably are thinking, wait a minute, can I just snap off the bishop here, and then the knight takes back, and then you just take the pawn? You actually can do that. And it's not, there isn't any type of tricks or tactics involved. The king is stuck in the center, but you see that that's not really a problem. So just a possible couple of moves. Rook to E8, which normally puts a lot of pressure on an uncastled king. But we see knight to D3, and after bishop to G4, you got F3. Now, it's not looking the prettiest for white, but it is a pawn. So, at the end of the day, you are doing pretty well. You can get castled, move rook over here, push here, stuff like that. So, like I said, it actually is a true pawn. So, that was something I was, looking at. I was like, okay, wait, isn't that just a pawn? It kind of is. It doesn't give you a huge advantage, but I mean, you're doing pretty good. So Dubov says, hey, man, I don't want any part of that. I'm going to go ahead and just castle. Very principled move. So we see rook to E8 now. We got knight takes C5, knight takes C5. We got bishop to A3. Now, as you can see, this bishop is a lot better on this type of diagonal, you know, because it's not blocked by a whole bunch of pawns. So we see queen to c7, rook a to b1. We got bishop to d7. We have knight down to d2. We got rook a to b8, and we see b6. b6 is very committal, just simply because of the fact that like this pawn is not protected by other pawns. So it's really kind of deep in black's position, and it's going to take some pieces, or a piece at least, behind it to make sure that we keep it anchored and stuff like that. So we got queen back to c8. Of course, making sure that we keep the connection with this knight, because we don't want to just drop the knight for nothing. So we got bishop takes c5, queen takes c5, and then we have knight to e4, trading off this knight. So bishop, so knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and then we have g6. Of course, you know, we're not going to just drop check here, you know, play something random like this or whatever, because, you know, we have this bishop snapping off that pawn with check. So, you know, we're going to defend against that. So we see g6. And we see bishop to d5 by white. Now, you know, this is possibly given a situation where this pawn is pinned, so maybe this pawn might be weak or something like that at some point. You know, it's always good to try to target these f7 and f2 pawns. Depends on the situation, but, you know, you always hear me talk about how weak those points are. So it could be like that through the entire game. But we have come to the point in the game where if you do want to stop the video and see what Wesley So plays here, go ahead and do so real quick. Okay, cool. The problem that Daniil Dubov actually has in this position is the fact that he has his queen and his rook on the same diagonal, and then Wesley So has that color of a bishop. So unfortunately for Dubov, Wesley So has bishop to f5. So if you guess bishop to f5, you recognize that you had a light square bishop, and these pieces are just juicy lined up on this diagonal. So this is a very, very tough move to meet. Dubov just moves out of the way. Even if you were to try to go bishop to e4, you would have a little bit of problems because the bishop would be taken on e4, deflecting the queen away from protecting c4. You would be snapping on c4. And then you have really two options. You can either just activate your rook and allow another pawn to be taken, or you can try to save things, but then you'll be running into f5. And the problem is the fact that you have this huge mass of pawns in the center of the board that are going to almost inevitably create a pass pawn, and it's going to be putting you in a very, very defensive position. So it's just not the best, no matter really how you cut it. So, you know, he goes ahead and says, hey, I'm just going to go queen to d2. And I'm just going to give up the rook. And then you see rook taking on b1. So as I said before, you know, the rook is taking care of the pawn on b6. So we got rook d to d8. And then we see e4. Also, something that was possible in the... So if we just play a couple more moves real quick. So the rook comes to d6. We have rook to b5. And then we have rook takes d5. And then we have pawn takes d5. Now, at this point in the game was where things really start to go downhill for Dubov. And I'll show you guys why. But if we back up, like I said, rook d comes to d8. What the computer wants you to actually do here is to play rook to b5 immediately. It's knowing that you're going to be snapping on d5, which is, it looks kind of crazy because you're like, wait a minute, you're just giving the queen away. Yes, but the computer is deeming that this position is so much better for black than it is, even though you're giving up the queen. So if you just run through a little variation real quick, we got the rook taking on c5, we got the rook taking on c5, then we see queen down to c1. And then we have rook e to c8. The queen comes to g5, and you know, you have to have a little bit of care going on with the situation because you can't just go and snap the pawn immediately because you're going to be dropping the pawn on e5. But even this is still, you know, pretty good for black. It's not that you're losing, even though you have, you know, you're down a queen, but you know, like I said, I mean, it's just you have these pawns. That's the major thing that the computer is considering when it's looking at this position, is the fact that you have so many pawns that can create a pass pawn, and then you just have these big heavy pieces behind it, and you're pretty much going to be relegating the queen to just being on d1. So, I mean, even though the queen is very strong, it's not going to be very strong. No piece is strong when it's just blockading a pawn. You know, it's a pretty defensive, kind of almost useless piece. So going into what we had, like I said, we had this position here, and the computer The computer actually did want you to kind of go into a similar situation where you do take here and then the rook takes there, and then you would play something possibly like queen to d3. And this would be a lot better because after the pawn takes on d5, the queen takes on c4, we got rook taking a5, and then we have d3. And the main issue that you have is the fact that this pawn is so far advanced, and also it can be protected with the e-pawn as well. And this pawn right here is very, very weak because, you know, there are no brother and sister pawns on the side of it to help. So, you know, that's kind of when you think about, you know, pawns and stuff like that, that's how you start to come to the conclusion of like good pawns or bad pawns and like what are weaknesses and strengths and stuff like that. And so, you know, that's definitely something, you know, to get really familiar with as far as like pawns are concerned, like, you know, trying to evaluate, you know, what pawns are good and what pawns are bad, stuff like that. So, we see h4 by white. We got h5 by black. The king comes to g2. We have a rook over to c8. And as you can see, I mean, black is just trying to like force this pawn all the way to the finish line, because once you drop queen to c2, I mean, you don't really have a lot of options after, you know, because the pawn is going to be all the way down, ready to just, you know, score a touchdown. So we got queen to g5, trying to get active a little bit. We see queen to b4, and let me see here. All right, we got queen to b4, and then we have d6. The thing that's unfortunate, if we just back up, the thing that's unfortunate about this move, queen to b4, is that you have two things to worry about. The first thing, obviously, is the fact that your rook is undefended and hanging. But you also have to worry about the fact that now this pawn has the ability to push here and push here with like literally no resistance, because this queen is holding this diagonal. So even if you, I mean, if you're thinking, okay, my rook is in danger, let me just move it to here, I mean, you're going to be looking at d2. And I mean, what do you do? I mean, you pretty much have to give your queen up for the pawn, you know, and that's not where you want to be. So we see we push d6, the queen takes on a5, and like I said, I mean, you're still looking at those issues because you don't have time to really just push this pawn up, because, you know, you go do something like that, and I guess you just go ahead and do this. You're just going to be giving your rook away, but I mean, you're still going to be, oh, I guess that. Okay, so that clearly is not the right variation to play, because I just thoroughly messed that up, whatever the situation is. But yes, this pawn is going and scoring a touchdown, and it's going to be lights out, all she wrote. And that is why Dubov did resign the game. So it's nice. You know, Wesley So started off the tournament with 2 straight wins. I haven't looked at round 3 yet to see what he has rolling on that one. I think I peeped round 4. I'm not sure what round I looked at, but I'm gonna be getting back to you guys in a second. And you guys definitely do see those times that I kind of veer off and start doing my own little, you know, calculation and stuff like that, because like sometimes I mess up. I'm a human being too, so cut me some slack, man. But yeah, for all my other people in the Philippines, Maayong buntag, Masantos Yakabo-san, we got Mayad na Agahan. We got Buenos Dias. Let's see what else we got. Marhe na Aga. And also I got another one, Ilonggo. Maanyong Aga. That one's kind of easy because that's similar to Cebuano. So I think I got all of them. Yeah, 9 bag na bigat. Yep, got them. I think I got all of them. So I mean, just welcome everybody. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Let me know what other videos you want me to see me do. And just leave some comments or whatever and let me know what's up. But I appreciate you guys, and I'll see y'all next time.